Man, I mean, like when I got into nootropics, my entire life changed. Like my productivity doubled. I was able to induce focus on cue, motivation on cue. I just felt amazing. Aniracetam, oxiracetam, 9-methyl-B-carboline. Like the choices are endless, and what you can do if you're stacking effectively, it's incredible. Episode number 134 of the Cortex Lab Nootropics podcast. I am your host, Ryan Michael Bell. Thanks so much for being with me. Guys, we're going to talk about Modafinil today. Pretty impressive compound, also known as Modafinil. And kind of just break it down, there's a little bit of mystery about why it's supposed to be allegedly 40% more effective and have higher bioavailability and also last longer than typical modafinil. And there's some truth to it. I'm going to break it down. I'll break down my experiences and how I dosed it. And we'll get right to it. In the meantime, what supports this broadcast is a couple epic nootropic products. Number one, the Cortex Stack. Look, if you just want to take 2 capsules and turn on mental energy, motivation, the will to want to sit down and do work, and that sort of fast but calm, powerful brain in order to do so, get a bottle of the Cortex Stack. Do that at livecortex.com. If you've bought it and already love it, get it for cheaper on auto ship, $27.99 a month. Auto ships to your doorstep every month. You can do that at livecortex.com. It takes about a minute. If you're new to nootropics, get Nootropics Ground Zero. It's a video course that I created to show you the ropes, give you stacks, but most importantly, give you a framework for how to properly use nootropics. You're not wasting the next 3 years trying to figure everything out. It's a video course that you can find at livecortex.com. Guys, trying to raise testosterone, get the Viking Testosterone Protocol. Very powerful protocol for raising test. You will get your libido, your erection quality, your morning EQ, all that stuff back on the Viking Testosterone Protocol. Last thing, if you want to work with me on either a 3.5-month or a 6-month basis, just pull the trigger. I mean, my typical client is a middle-aged business person, either young business person or middle-aged business male, who either performs pretty well but needs to perform better, or has some deficiencies in cognitive function, whether it's focus, motivation, mental energy, the will to stay on task for long periods of time. They just need productivity. Look, we will fully amp your productivity and turn your brain into a super performing beast. 3.5 months or 6 months, get either one of those one-on-one consulting packages at livecortex.com. Okay, so let's talk about FLMODA. Let me just give you nomenclature, and then we'll talk about what it's really doing, how it is, anywhere from 20 to 40% more effective than traditional modafinil, and kind of everything else in between. I'll give you my experience with it as well. So the nomenclature is CRL 4940. CRL 4940. It's also known as Modafinil. And the bisfluoro part is where it gets its extra efficacy. Now, there's not a whole lot of research on bisfluoro itself, but effectively it's a chemical that adds potency by allowing other chemicals to stay active and to work more efficiently when it comes to, in this case, the human nervous system. Modafinil, as it stands, just regular modafinil, but also FLMODA, is a wakefulness-promoting compound initially developed for narcolepsy to keep people awake. But regular people can take it and absolutely experience wakefulness. It's sort of like a stimulant but non-stimulant type of feeling. You feel like more of your brain is operating throughout the day. If you ever feel any type of inhibition on thinking or even energy or productivity or the will to be productive, and modafinil and all of its analogs basically just take that out of the picture. So you don't end up feeling stimulated like you would on Adderall or something really gross, but you do feel like you have the brain to really tackle tasks. I mean, it's a type of compound that I take if I want to work for 6 or 7 hours straight with a couple pee breaks and some food in between, and that's pretty much it. Just like go-to-town type of chemical. It's actually not, as far as I can tell, you can't get a prescription for FLMODA. You've got to buy it on various nootropic sites. I have a liquid solution that came with a dropper, and half the dropper is 30 milligrams, and the full dropper is 50 milligrams of FLMODA. I got it from science.bio many months back, and I still actually have some because you just don't need a whole lot of it to get what you need. But as far as the legitimacy of it, it was patented in 2013. So these are people that are invented it with the intention of making it more effective than adrafinil and modafinil and with fewer side effects. It's been in clinical trials. I think it's still in phase 1. That started in 2015. So it's like, if you understand the FDA's process or the process, the clinical trial process, there are many clinical trials, and they absolutely should be executed at the lengths that sort of the gold standard has in place. Like, some of these phases take 2 years. Like, one of the phases takes 1 to 8 years. Like, it should actually go through that process. So at this point, it's really not finished all of that, all the clinical trials. So, but, us as, sort of psychonauts and nootropics experimenters, we experiment with this kind of stuff. If it's like, if a dose super negatively affects you, don't touch it again. But it's rare when it comes to nootropic research chemicals, because that's really what we're talking about at this point. It's rare that you get some sort of, I've never heard, any of these chemicals cause some sort of deadly effect. And it's really rare that you get like a super side effect from any of the research chemicals. Just sort of a disclaimer for people. Let's shift to my experience with it, right? Okay, so with regular modafinil, I've zeroed in on like a minimum effective dose of like 75 to 100 milligrams. Now, I can take up to 150. I can sometimes squeeze 200, but it starts getting into the realm of disrupting my sleep. So I really rarely go to that level. But it would be nice if you could get the same effect of modafinil by taking a mere 40 milligrams of it. So I got a dropper from Science.bio, no affiliation. And off the top of my head, I forget because it's upstairs, but the dropper is like, it's like halfway through or a quarter way through is like 30 milligrams, and then full dropper is 50 milligrams, like the equivalent of 50 milligrams of this chemical. I haven't yet gotten powder. I'm trying to work a source in China to get FL-modafinil powder, but I mean, it's just not as available as usual. My experience has been the following. So like trying to compare the doses, let's call it 50 milligrams of FL-modafinil to like my regular dose of modafinil. What it seems like is it's about 250. That whole 50 milligram dose was, talk about like fewer side effects. It actually didn't for me. It kept me awake that night. I was up to like 3 a.m. My girlfriend was like asleep, and I wanted to go to sleep and I couldn't go to sleep. And I wanted to try the highest, dose that I could within reason, just to sort of see what my highest tolerable dose is, and it's well below that. So I ended up settling on about 20 milligrams, which is just a fraction of the dropper in the dropper bottle from Science.bio. And that ended up working really well. It was still a little, I don't want to say too powerful, but it was definitely like really, really strong, probably equivalent to like 200 milligrams of modafinil. But what seemed clear about it is that the onset was slightly quicker. Modafinil takes about 30, 40 minutes for me. I mean, I can feel it at 25, but for the full effect, it's like 30, 40 minutes. I definitely felt like I felt the full effect of this at like minute 25, which is pretty remarkable, right? This whole, going back to the whole bisfluoro analog of modafinil and that chemical that enhances bioavailability and reactivity and efficiency, it seemed to work for me. Now, I went into this knowing that, so placebo, not placebo, hard to tell, right? So that was basically the case. I took it right around 11 o'clock. I don't like to take any modafinil or modafinil analogs after noon, after 12 noon. So that felt like a safe bet to me. And yeah, I mean, within 25 minutes, it was a very, very clearly pronounced onset of like, I feel 150% different than I did before I took this. And then I just started to work. And just like the modafinil feeling, it's effortless, it's easy. It's easier to multitask. I almost want to. Stuff that I have been putting aside that I don't want to do or don't feel like doing or don't have the motivation to do was extremely easy to just do. Like, you get in those states with nootropics where you're like, why can't I just like be like this all the time, right? It's like, but you can't. Cycling is necessary, and you use them when you've got workloads, and you want to function well, or you want to like speak really well at the speaking engagement or whatever. It lasted throughout pretty much the entire day. I stopped working at about 6 o'clock, so I took it at 11. It set in at like 11:25 a.m. I worked until about 6 p.m. I'm a gamer for fun, right? So a first-person shooter gamer. So I went and then gamed after, probably until about 9:30, and I was better. I mean, I was more awake. It was less stressful on my brain, because if you're a gamer and you're like sort of sitting in front of a screen and you're going through different matches, I mean, like it can get stressful. Your heart rate goes up. Like you can get to the point where you give yourself a headache because you're gaming. That didn't happen. I just kind of muscled through it like powerfully. And I did really well. I was playing Battlefield 4 and whatever. And I think I did like better, a little bit better than normal. Come bedtime, which was about midnight for me, I took some melatonin, 3 milligrams melatonin. I took 300 milligrams of L-theanine just to sort of make sure that I could go to sleep. And yeah, from like midnight to 1, I was having a little bit of trouble going to sleep, but that's not a huge deal. I ended up going to sleep and I was fine. I woke up the next day feeling like, relatively normal. I made sure that I got some L-Dopa in my diet instead of just taking regular Dopa, which you can do too, just because you're inhibiting the reuptake of dopamine probably a little more than typical modafinil. And so that comes from a reservoir of releasable dopamine that's like, being told to release more than normal under the condition of having FL-modafinil or modafinil in the case. So for some people, that depletes dopamine stores temporarily. Like if you feel groggy, tired after Afinils, you want to get L-Dopa in either supplementally or eat foods that are precursors to dopamine. And that was pretty much my experience. I have a whole dropper left of it. This is what's interesting about it to me. Efficiency and lower dosing when you and having a lot of a compound is like a really good thing. Right. So like I look at that compound, I'm like, man, it's like I only really dose modafinil and analogs like 4 or 5 times a month. It's on those really, really heavy intensive days where I just need to get a whole workload cranked out. And this vial of FL-modafinil liquid will last me a considerable period of time considering my dose frequency. So that's the good thing about it. And look, I mean, it's purported to be 50 or 40% more effective, last considerably longer than regular modafinil. And, I guess that's hard for me to say because modafinil itself lasts a long, long time. Like I still notice it at 9 p.m. I still notice it at 10 p.m. Like it's just like it's died down, but my brain is still functioning better than baseline. But if I were to say yes or no, is it more effective than regular modafinil? I would say yes. Not by a whole lot. Putting yourself in the category of like, well, should I get FL-modafinil versus modafinil? It's really a personal choice. I like having it around because it's easy. It's efficient. Like I do not have to take a lot of it. It onsets really quickly and it lasts a while. And it gives me powerful wakefulness and motivation and kind of just like a laser drive to do my work. So that's the synopsis. At this stage, hard to say where you can get it other than science.bio. I mean, there's vendors out there, some sketchy, some not, but do your diligence on vendors no matter what when it comes to research chemicals and modafinil analogs. Any of the Afinils you should be doing your research on. But Science.bio has a good quality product. Again, no affiliation, but that's what I'm using. And it's like, I don't know, it's like really easy. I basically just put it in a little bit of water, stirred it around and drank it. And that was it. That's it, man. Look, yeah, FL-modafinil has been on the scene for quite some time and people have been asking me to kind of do a review about it and talk about it. And I think it's an awesome compound. I like when new compounds come out, with the exception of like 9-methylbicarbonate, I'm not really that interested in them after I experiment with them because, they might be just analogs of other compounds we already know, or I can achieve the same effect with a set of other nootropic compounds. But FL-modafinil is definitely different. It is worth the sort of hype that it's getting out there on the web. And yeah, if you can get your hands on it, it's a good tool to have in the arsenal. So let's do a recap. The nomenclature is CRL 4940, CRL 4940. The other name for it is bisfluoromodafinil. It's the bisfluoro analog of modafinil, and bisfluoro is a chemical that really enhances the bioavailability and the efficiency and the efficacy of other sort of bioactive, psychoactive compounds. Dose range is hard, right? Because again, people's dose range on modafinil is different between people. Like I had to take 20 to 30 milligrams of it. Like that's really the highest I can go on FL-modafinil because my dose of modafinil, I really can't go above 200 milligrams. So it's probably equivalent to what I'm getting with modafinil. I did notice that it onset a little bit quicker and it did seem to last longer. What's probably the best part about it is, especially if you get a liquid dripper solution of it, is that it's really easy and you don't have to take a lot of it. And within 25, 30 minutes, depending on your body, you're like in. It's like one of the easiest things ever. And what's cool about modafinil is, though I stack it with racetams to get the memory aspect of it, sometimes I just don't need that. Like, it depends on what kind of work I'm doing, but I don't really need to do that. I can take it by itself and it just turns my brain on, something crazy. So that is the rundown, the breakdown, the explanation, my experience with FLMODA. Pretty awesome chemical. I'm going to be stacking it with racetams and trying to do some experiments to see like just how I can optimize that dose, and optimize like the, how the FLMODA affects my brain, and then bring other elements in to sort of affect other parallel elements of brain function to sort of make a better synergistic experience. Like, I'd like to try to take FLMODA and then really work on the cholinergic side and see if I just end up like being a supercomputer for 6 hours. And if I do, I will report it to you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. Those of you that are listening on the podcast, those of you that are on YouTube, thanks for being here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. It's called the Cortex Labs Nootropics Podcast, because we crank these out in less frequency than the videos on YouTube, but we put them out. At this point, there's 134 episodes. They go all the way back to like 2015, and there's a lot of really good information in these podcasts. Support this broadcast. Go to livecortex.com. Look, buy the Cortex deck. This is a powerful, powerful nootropics deck. It's like, I built it for entrepreneurs initially because I was an entrepreneur and I wanted to build something for me to like make me function for 12 hours a day. And it just so turns out that like anyone that needs brain function benefits from Cortex. If you respond well to it, which most people do, you will like it. Get it at livecortex.com. If you already buy it and love it, you have to do auto ship. It is cheaper and automatic. So you don't even have to go through the process of going to livecortex.com and then purchasing Cortex again. It just auto ships. You auto get billed cheaper, $27.99, and then it ships to your doorstep every 30 days. Do that at livecortex.com. Nootropics Ground Zero if you're brand new. Nootropics Masterclass if you're a couple years in and want to ascend to the 6-year mark. Viking Testosterone Protocol if you're a guy that is serious about raising tests and you don't want to go on TRT. Just get the protocol. You'll work with me directly and we'll get it done. And then lastly, look, if you're a young or middle-aged businessman that performs awesomely but wants to take it to the next level, look, there's so much we can do. Work with me for 3.5 months or 6 months to do that. Or if you have some sort of brain performance deficiency, energy deficiency, and you want to use the full scope of nootropic chemicals that are out there to make you perform really well, and you want to realize the full scope of what your brain can do, I mean, it's life-changing. I know it sounds like I'm like Tony Robbinsing you right now, but it's life-changing when you recognize a higher level of cognitive performance. You're like, I never want to go back, and this is the most useful tool in the world for me in my life. Either work with me for 3.5 months or 6 months. Do that at livecortex.com. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Talk to you next time.